For 12 years, I poured my heart and soul into growing our family real estate business from a small operation into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. I sacrificed my dreams, my relationships, and countless hours working to make sure our company thrived. I thought my parents appreciated everything I had done. Then came that dinner, the one where my father looked me straight in the eyes and announced they were replacing me as CEO with my nephew Jackson, a 22-year-old kid who had never worked a real job in his life. Where are you watching from today? If my story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe as I share how I survived the ultimate family betrayal. I grew up as the only son in a family that started with very little. My father, Richard, launched our real estate business from our garage, handling property listings and showings, while my mother, Diana, managed all the accounting and paperwork from our kitchen table. Even as a kid, I was fascinated by what they were building. While other kids played video games, I spent weekends helping my dad put up signs and summers organizing files for my mom. I developed a genuine interest in real estate, though deep down I dreamed of becoming a musician. I had played guitar since I was 9 and had real talent according to my teachers, but that passion would have to wait. Unlike me, my sister Amelia showed zero interest in the family business. 3 years older than me, she was laser-focused on becoming a doctor from an early age. Our parents supported her ambitions, completely paying for her medical school and celebrating every achievement. I was proud of her too, but sometimes wondered if my own dreams deserved similar support. When college came around, there was never really a question about what I would study. My parents insisted on a business degree, arguing it was practical and would help me understand the fundamentals of running a company. I agreed, thinking I would work for them for a few years after graduation and then pursue music on my own terms. Looking back, I realize how naive that plan was. During college, I discovered I had a natural talent for business development and building client relationships. I could connect with people, easily understand their needs, and find creative solutions to their problems. These skills proved invaluable when I started working full-time at the company after graduation. As my parents approached their 60s, they began relying on me more and more to handle the day-to-day operations. I was 26 when my father called me into his office for what would become a life-changing conversation. He looked tired, sitting behind his cluttered desk with reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Edgar, your mother and I have been talking," he began, removing his glasses. "We think it is time for you to take over as CEO." The moment was surreal. I felt honored but also trapped. This was the culmination of years steering me toward taking over the family legacy, yet I still harbored those dreams of music that I had never fully explored. "The business will be yours someday," he continued, as if reading my hesitation. "This is just making official what we always planned." When I took over, the company was struggling in several ways. Our processes were outdated, our marketing practically non-existent, and our reputation limited to a small circle of clients. We had 12 employees, most of whom had been with my parents for years and were resistant to change. The recession had hit us hard, and without modernization, we risked becoming irrelevant. Over the next 12 years, I transformed everything. I implemented a complete digital overhaul of our operations, developed a sophisticated online presence, and expanded our services beyond residential real estate into commercial development and property management. Some decisions were incredibly difficult. I had to let go of several longtime employees who refused to adapt to new technologies. I had to decline business from old family friends when their proposals did not make financial sense. I negotiated tough deals that sometimes made me unpopular, but ultimately benefited our bottom line. Under my leadership, our annual revenue grew from $800,000 to over $12 million. Our staff expanded from 12 to 78 employees across 3 offices. We became one of the most respected real estate development firms in our region, known for innovation and reliability. This success came at a steep personal cost. My engagement to Marie, my college sweetheart, ended after I canceled our vacation plans for the 3rd time to handle a business emergency. My music gathered dust, my guitar untouched in its case, for months at a time. I worked 80-hour weeks, took calls at all hours, and spent holidays reviewing contracts instead of celebrating. But I believed it was worth it. This was my family legacy, and I was making it stronger for the next generation. During this time, my sister Amelia married Thomas, a marketing executive for a pharmaceutical company. He was charming and ambitious, always asking questions about our business, despite having no background in real estate. When their son Jackson was born, I became a devoted uncle, though my busy schedule meant I saw him less than I would have liked. Jackson grew up with advantages I never had: private schools, international vacations, and eventually an education at an elite business school that my parents paid for despite Amelia and Thomas doing well financially. During his college years, I offered Jackson summer internships at the company, hoping to mentor him and perhaps groom him for a role in the business someday working alongside me. Those internships revealed a side of Jackson that concerned me. He showed up late, spent more time networking than learning the fundamentals, and displayed an entitled attitude towards staff who had been with us for years. When I tried to provide constructive feedback, he would nod politely, but never change his behavior. Still, I never imagined he would become my replacement. He was family after all, and I wanted him to succeed, just not at my expense. The dinner invitation from my parents seemed routine. They suggested we gather at their home to discuss some business matters and enjoy a family meal, something we did every couple of months. What struck me as unusual was the specific request that I arrive at 6:30 sharp and the news that Amelia, Thomas, and Jackson would be joining us. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt strangely formal. My mother had prepared an elaborate meal, and my father had opened an expensive bottle of wine, one he usually reserved for special occasions. Everyone was already seated at the dining table, engaged in animated conversation that quieted when I entered. "Edgar, right on time," my father said, gesturing to the empty chair across from Jackson, who gave me a smile that did not reach his eyes. The first hour was pleasant enough. We reminisced about family vacations, laughed about old mishaps in the early days of the business, and my parents proudly recounted stories of my early successes as CEO. In retrospect, it felt like a eulogy. After dessert was served, my father cleared his throat and straightened in his chair. "Edgar, we asked you here tonight because we need to discuss the future of the company." I nodded, assuming we would be talking about expansion plans or perhaps my parents officially retiring from the board. "Your mother and I have been reflecting on the direction of the business," he continued, his voice taking on a formal tone I rarely heard at family gatherings. "While you have done an admirable job maintaining what we built, we feel the company needs a fresh perspective to truly thrive in the modern market." I frowned, confused by his phrasing. Maintaining, Dad, the company has grown exponentially under my leadership. My mother reached over and patted my hand. "Of course it has, dear. But the business world is changing so quickly now. We need someone with fresh ideas, someone who understands the digital landscape and can take bolder risks." "Someone like Jackson," my father said, gesturing toward my nephew, who sat up straighter, a practiced expression of humble determination on his face. I laughed, certain this was some elaborate joke. Very funny. "Now, what did you really want to discuss?" The silence that followed confirmed this was no joke. My father continued explaining that after careful consideration, they had decided to appoint Jackson as the new CEO effective at the end of the month. I would transition to an advisory role, which essentially meant having no actual authority while keeping up appearances for clients who knew me. As the reality sank in, my parents offered their justifications. My father emphasized Jackson's prestigious education and innovative thinking. My mother expressed concern about my work-life balance, suggesting this change would be good for me personally. Thomas had prepared a slick presentation on his phone, which he eagerly showed me, outlining a 5-year vision for company growth that apparently had been in development for months. The most painful revelation was that my sister had known about this plan all along. Amelia avoided my eyes as she added her support for the decision, mentioning how excited she was to see her son carry on the family legacy. "This is not a reflection on your performance," my father said unconvincingly. "This is about positioning the company for the future." I struggled to maintain my composure as emotions crashed through me like waves. Shock gave way to anger, then to desperate attempts to reason with them. I pointed out my years of sacrifice, the growth metrics, the client relationships I had personally cultivated. My father dismissed these as past achievements, while Jackson began enthusiastically sharing ideas for changes he planned to implement immediately. It became clear that my family expected me to simply accept this decision gracefully. They had already determined my worth and found it wanting compared to the potential they saw in Jackson. 22 years old with no real experience was apparently more valuable than my 12 years of proven leadership. I left their house in a daze, barely remembering the drive home. That night I lay awake until dawn replaying the conversation and trying to understand how my parents could discard me so easily. Had I misunderstood our relationship all these years? Had my contributions meant nothing compared to the allure of Jackson's business school jargon and Thomas's flashy proposals? The transition period that followed was excruciating. I was asked to train Jackson on all aspects of company operations, essentially teaching him how to replace me. He showed little respect for the systems and relationships I had built immediately, making changes to processes that had proven effective for years. "We need to disrupt the status quo," he would say, using buzzwords from his business courses without understanding the practical implications. My parents supported every decision Jackson made, no matter how questionable. When he decided to cut ties with a long-term client because their account was not profitable enough, my father praised his tough business acumen, despite my warnings about the relationship's strategic importance. The staff were confused and caught in loyalty conflicts. Many had been hired by me and appreciated my leadership style, but they could see which way the wind was blowing. Some began copying Jackson on emails that previously would have come only to me. Others started bringing questions to him first, even though I was technically still in charge. One afternoon, I overheard my mother talking to a board member in the conference room. "Edgar was always too conventional," she said. "He never wanted to take risks. Jackson has such vision." The final insult came when I returned from a client meeting to find interior decorators measuring my office. Jackson had decided he wanted to redesign the executive suite before he officially took over. The decorators looked embarrassed when they saw me, but continued their work as if I were already gone. The breaking point came during a meeting with Westridge Development, a major client we had courted for years. Jackson insisted on leading the presentation despite my concerns about his familiarity with their needs. Within minutes, he had made several critical mistakes, misrepresenting our capabilities and quoting rates well below our standard pricing. I watched the clients exchange concerned glances and stepped in, smoothly correcting the misinformation and steering the conversation back to solid ground. By the end of the meeting, I had salvaged the deal, but the damage to our professional image was concerning. In the parking lot afterward, my father pulled me aside. Good thing Jackson was there to connect with the younger executives on their team. They really responded to his energy. I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, he nearly lost us the account. I had to step in and fix his mistakes. You always catastrophize Edgar. He was doing fine. Besides, they signed, did not they? That is what matters." The next day, I discovered that plans were underway to rename the company from Harrington Family Properties to Elevate Real Estate Group, a name Jackson had created with Thomas's marketing input. The family legacy I had worked to preserve was being erased with my parents' blessing. Walking through the main office later that week, I found maintenance workers taking down the employee recognition wall I had created years earlier to celebrate staff milestones and achievements. When I asked what was happening, I was told that Jackson felt the space would be better used for a digital display showing real-time performance metrics. I stormed into my parents' office without knocking, something I had never done before. They looked up from their desks, startled by my uncharacteristic entrance. 12 years, I said, my voice shaking. 12 years I gave to this company. I put everything else in my life on hold. And this is how you repay me. "Edgar, calm down," my mother began. "No, I deserve an explanation. A real one, not the corporate speak you have been feeding me. Why, Jackson, why now? What did I do wrong?" My father sighed. "You did not do anything wrong exactly. You just plateaued. The company needs someone who can take it to the next level. And you think an inexperienced 22-year-old can do that better than me? He has never even held a real job. He has fresh perspective," my mother insisted, "and Thomas will be mentoring him closely." That was when it clicked. This had never been about my performance or Jackson's capabilities. This was about Thomas, who had been positioning himself and his son within my family for years, seeing the business as an opportunity to advance his own ambitions. I left their office without another word, got in my car, and for the first time in over a decade drove to my old music studio space. I had continued paying rent on it all these years, telling myself I would get back to music someday. The room was dusty, my instruments untouched, a physical representation of the dreams I had sacrificed. Sitting on the worn couch with my guitar across my lap, I broke down completely. Years of suppressed emotions flooded out as I grieved not just for the job I was losing, but for the life I had put on hold for a family that did not value my sacrifice. In a moment of vulnerability, I called Marie, my ex-fiancée, whom I had not spoken to in years. To my surprise, she answered, "Edgar, is everything okay? You never call in the middle of the day." The concern in her voice, even after all this time, broke something open in me. I told her everything, expecting judgment for the choices that had led me here. Instead, she listened with compassion. "I always knew this might happen," she said gently. "Your parents never saw you clearly, Edgar. They saw what you could do for them." Her words illuminated a painful truth. I had spent my entire adult life trying to earn the approval of people who were constitutionally incapable of giving it. I had built my identity around a company that was never truly mine. The next day, Sophia, our operations manager, who had been with the company since I took over, asked to speak with me privately. Her loyalty had always been to me, rather than the family name, and she shared concerns about Jackson's leadership. "He is making promises to clients we cannot keep," she said. "And he has already initiated some investments that the board does not know about, high-risk ventures that could put our stability in jeopardy." She also revealed that several long-term clients had reached out to her directly confused about the changes and concerned about continuing their relationships with the company under new leadership. That evening, I met with Alan, a business mentor who had guided me through some of our most challenging expansions. Over dinner, I shared the entire situation. "You have three options," he said, after listening carefully. "Fight to stay and make everyone miserable, including yourself. Stay in the advisory role and watch them potentially destroy what you built, or walk away completely and build something new on your own terms." I knew he was right. Fighting would only prolong the pain and potentially damage the relationships I had with staff who would be caught in the crossfire. Staying as an advisor would be a daily exercise in frustration and humiliation. Walking away was terrifying, but offered the only path to healing. That night, I drafted a formal resignation letter. It was professional, comprehensive, and dignified, much like the way I had always conducted business. I also prepared a detailed handover document, outlining all ongoing projects, client relationships, and institutional knowledge that might not be documented elsewhere. I requested a formal meeting with my parents and Jackson the following morning. They seemed surprised by my calm demeanor as I entered the conference room, perhaps expecting another emotional confrontation. "I have decided to resign from the company effective immediately." I began sliding copies of my letter across the table. My mother's face registered shock, but the advisory position would not work for any of us, I finished for her. "I have prepared this handover document to ensure a smooth transition. It contains everything Jackson will need to know that is not in our official documentation." I stood and addressed them directly. "For 12 years, I gave everything I had to this company. I increased revenue by 1,500%. I expanded our services, modernized our operations, and built a team of dedicated professionals. I sacrificed my personal life and my own dreams because I believed in what we were building together." I paused, making eye contact with each of them. "I thought we were a family first and a business second. I was wrong, so I am choosing to step away completely." I placed my company keys and ID badge on the table. "I wish you all success. Jackson, the company is yours now, truly. Do right by the people who work here. They deserve good leadership." As I walked out of the conference room, I passed through the main office, where many of the staff had gathered, having somehow heard about the meeting. The look of respect and sadness in their eyes meant more to me than any recognition my family had ever given. Several followed me to the elevator, including Sophia, who whispered, "This is not the end of your story, Edgar. It is just the beginning." The first few weeks after leaving were some of the hardest of my life. Without the constant demands of the business, I felt untethered, adrift in a sea of time I had never experienced as an adult. The silence in my apartment was deafening after years of constant phone calls and emails. I slept for nearly 12 hours the first night, my body finally catching up on years of sleep deficit. When I woke, the absence of urgent messages and pending decisions felt both liberating and terrifying. Who was I without the company? What defined me now? Marie and I began meeting for coffee, rebuilding our friendship one conversation at a time. She had married and divorced in the years since our engagement ended, and now ran her own physical therapy practice. Her life seemed balanced in a way mine never had been. You know, she said, during one of our meetings, your guitar is still sitting in that studio collecting dust. Her gentle prodding led me back to music. The first time I played again, my fingers were stiff and uncooperative, but muscle memory gradually returned. I started writing songs about loss, betrayal, and rediscovery, pouring my emotions into music in a way I never could in business meetings. News of the company reached me through former colleagues who stayed in touch. Jackson had implemented sweeping changes immediately, many of which were causing turmoil. The rebranding had confused long-standing clients, and his aggressive investment strategy had stretched their financial resources dangerously thin. I felt no satisfaction in hearing about these struggles, only sadness for the employees caught in the fallout. I began therapy, something I had always been too busy to consider before. My therapist helped me process the grief and anger without letting it consume me. She pointed out patterns in my relationship with my parents that went back to childhood, always seeking approval that was perpetually just out of reach. Your worth was never tied to that company, she reminded me in every session. It was always inside you. Gradually, I began rebuilding my life. I started a small consulting business focused on helping family-owned companies navigate succession, planning ethically and effectively. The irony was not lost on me, but my experience gave me valuable insight into both what to do and what not to do. Industry contacts who had respected my approach at Harrington reached out when they heard I was consulting. Many were dealing with similar family dynamics and appreciated my first-hand understanding of the emotional complexities involved. On weekends, I formed a band with several other professionals seeking creative outlets. We performed at local venues, playing a mix of covers and original songs. The first time I performed on stage, I felt more alive than I had in years, connecting with an audience in a way that business meetings never allowed. Marie attended that first show, cheering loudly from the front row. Our friendship had slowly evolved into something more, both of us older and wiser than we had been before. She understood my need to build a balanced life and supported my journey without making demands. 6 months after my resignation, a surprising opportunity arose. Gregory Tanner, one of our former clients who had taken his business elsewhere after Jackson took over, contacted me about a potential partnership. He had significant capital and was interested in starting a new real estate development company focused on sustainable urban projects, an area I had always wanted to explore but had been unable to prioritize at Harrington. The proposition forced me to consider some difficult ethical questions. Would creating a competing business be an act of revenge? Would it damage relationships with family members who, despite everything I still cared about, after careful consideration and discussions with my therapist and Marie, I decided to move forward, but with a different approach. Our new company, Cornerstone Sustainable Development, would focus on a niche my family's business had never explored, working with community organizations and local governments on mixed-use projects that prioritized affordability and environmental impact. Within a year, Cornerstone was thriving. Several former Harrington employees joined us, including Sophia, who brought her operational expertise and unwavering integrity. We built a company culture based on work-life balance, transparent communication, and shared success, everything I had wanted to implement at Harrington, but had been unable to fully realize while trying to prove myself to my parents. Looking back now, I realized the painful end to my time at the family business was actually the beginning of something authentic. The company had never truly been mine, despite my years of dedication. Now I had built something that reflected my values, my vision, and allowed space for the rest of my life to flourish. I heard through Amelia that my parents' business was struggling under Jackson's leadership. Several major clients had left, and Thomas's marketing strategies had failed to attract enough new business to compensate. My parents had been forced to come out of retirement to help stabilize operations, though they would never admit to me that they had made a mistake. They reached out several times, initially with casual invitations to family events, then with thinly veiled requests for business advice. I maintained polite but firm boundaries, attending occasional family gatherings but refusing to discuss business matters. It was a difficult balance to strike, but necessary for my own well-being. My relationship with Amelia survived, somewhat surprisingly. She eventually admitted that she had had reservations about Jackson taking over, but had felt pressured by Thomas and our parents. We agreed to keep family relationships separate from business discussions, which allowed us to preserve the sibling bond that had nearly been destroyed. Marie and I built a life together that neither of us could have imagined during our first attempt at a relationship. With the perspective gained through our time apart, we created a partnership based on mutual support of each other's goals and dreams, rather than sacrifice or compromise. The most profound change was in how I defined success. For years, I had measured my worth through revenue figures, client acquisitions, and my parents' approval. Now, success meant building a business that allowed everyone involved to thrive, playing music that moved people, and having time to actually live my life instead of just working through it. What would your life look like if you measured success by your own standards, rather than someone else's expectations? Have you ever had to walk away from something you built to find something better? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the greatest success comes after what feels like failure. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to create a life that truly belongs to you.